I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Donnie and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
my head up.
I'm South Carolina, so I just
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Mars?
Oh, my heart.
Happy 20th anniversary.
My heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? Donnie.
and dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself.
The doctor lived next door to the janitor, to the reverend, and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Donnie, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it all the more.
Letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
First name's Donnie, last name's Glover. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. I hope that you are well. It's the end of the week, but we have a very special show to cap it off. Let me just tell you. Had an opportunity last night to hang out with Mr. Larry Jennings and a well-curated group of people from Baltimore, including probably one of the youngest members of the group, a young entrepreneur, 15 years old, and we're going to celebrate him at the next Black Wall Street Awards, which is Wednesday, October 11th. Our featured honoree is none other than Congressman Kwesi Mfume. You can go to BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. Do pick up a copy of Unapologetically Black. I've told you that Charles Robinson, the senior journalist, says that I don't promote my books enough, and that's the 2021 book, I Am Black Wall Street. So there you go. Make sure you pick them up on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. So today's guest, let me just tell you, is a dear friend of Sandra Dobson, and there is an event coming up on October 29th. That's a Sunday. We'll be honoring the 100th birthday, posthumously, if you will, of the great late Reverend Vernon Dobson of Union Baptist Church. And so here to discuss Reverend Dobson, but also more importantly, his body of work, is Mr. Arnie Graf, community organizer extraordinaire. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about Mr. Graf's life. He's worked around the United States and in other countries to organize city, county, and metropolitan-wide, nonpartisan, institutionally based organizations that knit together multi-faith congregations, synagogues, mosques, and temples with local unions and various civic organizations and not-for-profit or associations to amass enough power to both challenge and engage the corporate and political leaders in the communities in which they are blessed. What does that mean for someone like Donnie Glover here in Sandtown? That means that a block away from my house, and I live in a Baltimore City row house, but a block away is the Nehemiah Housing Development created by Build Baltimoreans United in Leadership Development, of which Mr. Arnie Graf knows very well. Arnie Graf, good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. How are you, Donnie?
It is truly, truly a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show. Where are you? What part of the world are you in?
Howard County, Ellicott City.
So I I don't like reading bios, but what would you say are some of the highlights of your career besides mentoring a U.S. president?
Well, I would say my initial entry into my work was my involvement in the civil rights movement with CORE, Congress for Racial Equality, that was founded by the great James Farmer, and that was my initial introduction to the work that I began to do. I was a pretty naive soul and didn't realize what was going on, and got involved through a friend, and kind of changed my life. And I would say that was a major highlight. I spent 2 years in a small village in West Africa, Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone.
Yep.
That's where they send British expatriates back to.
They did.
I got to tell you, I got to stop you right there. I did not know. I figured that those British expats were just from the United States, but they weren't. They were also from England and Jamaica.
That's right. That's right.
Some of them were Maroons.
Yeah, you got it. You know, it's history. That's great. And I was a teacher. I was in a second or third group. I can't remember, the Peace Corps. And I spent 2 years in a small village, in a village called Yangama. And it was, Yangama is near the border of Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. And that was an amazing experience for me.
Now, Liberia, that's where they sent American freed
That's
black
right.
people back to.
Exactly. And that was another life shaping experience for me.
How so?
Well, I'm from New York City, and I'm an urban person, and I land in this small village. I asked the man that I was renting the hut from, where's the water? I didn't know anything, and he said, "Oh, sorry, man, I forgot." I said, "Oh, okay." He says, "Just wait a minute." I said, "Wait a minute," and he comes back and he gives me a shovel. He says, "Go dig your well, man." So it was just all very different, man. It was, and I was assigned to teach at a.
How long did you have to dig it? How big a hole did you have to dig?
You got to go pretty deep, man. But people from the village were kind. They saw me out there struggling. So they came out and they all helped. And that when I realized, that it takes a village, right?
Yes, it does.
And so I lived there 2 years. I got to travel around West Africa. I went to Liberia, Senegal, all over, Guinea-Bissau, and that was Morocco. That was a really life-shaping experience for me. I'd say that was, and I don't know, going to the Industrial Areas Foundation and meeting Saul Alinsky and getting involved there and being there and then becoming the co-director of the foundation until I, retired. So I got to
You just glossed over IAF. What's it stand for again?
IAF is the Industrial Areas Foundation. It was founded in 1939 by a man named Saul Alinsky. Anybody interested could read his books. His books always had the word radical in it, so you could read Reveille for Radicals or Rules for Radicals. And it seemed to make sense to me what he was talking about, how to organize in communities, and that people speak for themselves. And they didn't need people coming in telling them what to do or how to organize, or that the government could never organize people. You wouldn't really be free that way. And so he taught us how to build independent, organizations. And after spending a summer with them in Chicago, where they were then, the Industrial Area Foundation, I went to Milwaukee and built a organization there. And then I went to San Antonio to work for an organization that was Mexican American. And that was another great experience. I never worked around Mexican American people, Latino people. And it was an all Mexican American organization. It was, they had been terribly exploited. The city was 55% Mexican American. And in the majority of the poor areas, the barrios, they had built those areas, but they never put any drainage in there. They just didn't care about these people. And so the floods were terrible. I remember visiting a person my first week, and I saw all their furniture was up on cinder blocks. Their couch you had to climb up onto, and the chairs and the table where they ate. I thought maybe this is a custom that I don't understand, And so finally, as they relaxed around me, they weren't used to having, Anglo white people, in their home. I said, can I ask you, why is all the furniture up on these big cinder blocks? And they said, oh, that's for the water to flow through. And I said, well, what do you mean? Well, we don't have any drainage, so when it rains, we open up the front door and the back door, and the water runs through and through the house. So it doesn't destroy our chairs and couches. And I don't know what in the world, what the heck is going on here? And so that was a real wonderful experience for me, forcing the city to put billions of dollars into drainage, just basic decency, didn't have running water.
Mr. Arnie, when I say my prayers at night, I thank God for some of the very simple things that we have, like running water, like electricity, because it is my understanding that maybe half of the people in the world do not have access to running water.
Amen.
To electricity.
Yep. It's I never thought about it until I lived in Africa without any running water or electricity. But then to come into the United States and be in the 10th biggest city in the country, and there's this hundreds of thousands of people who don't have water. I mean, they had running water, but they don't have any drainage, and they get flooded every year. I just, it just kind of blew my mind that people that could be that racist. I mean, that unthinking and caring. Anyway, the areas.
What do you think of the spirit of the people?
Well, it was wonderful. I mean, at first,
these are people. Look, these are people that don't have the accoutrements of modern life. But what was their attitude like toward life?
Well, for many of them, they were religious, and the plus side of that was they had a wonderful spirit, and they in general cared for each other, but everybody was in the same situation, and they had a wonderful sense of community. But the downside was that they had come to accept the way things were. They had tried many times, and the city was run by, Anglos, whites, and they hadn't gotten anywhere. And so they'd become acceptant of that kind of, situation. That was their lot in life. That's the way it is, You can't do anything about it. We've tried and tried and tried. And so there was their spirit of community internally was wonderful, but their resignation of many people, was both sad and angering to me. And so, but in any community you find certain people who have a lot of fight in them and are angry in the right kind of way. I don't mean temper tantrum, but angry at being oppressed and their situation. And you build off of that. And
why did you? How did you come to care?
That's a great question. I've been reflecting on that because I didn't come from. My parents came from poverty, but I didn't.
What'd your parents teach you?
Well, my mother grew up in and out of welfare, and my father never finished high school. And every once in a while, some people would help them, and drop off food or, help with the rent so they didn't get put out. And they told me that, we're going to get you a college education, you and your brother. And even if you have to work, we're going to do that. But when you make it, because you're going to make it, we're going to see to that. Don't forget the people that when we didn't have food, came by and dropped it off for us. So it wasn't political. It was my parents really weren't political, but they were good people. They gave what they could to people who even had less than them. So I kind of grew up with that, and I didn't have a political sense. What gave me a political sense to it, I was just, knew I was to be charitable. But the civil rights movement gave me a political sense to go that there was a thing called justice, not just charity. And so I think that, helped to shape me, both my family and the movement. Did more for me, I'll tell you, than I did for it anyway.
I got something for you, Mr. Arnie.
All right.
It's a prayer. It says, I ask God for strength that I might achieve. I was made weak that I might learn humbly to obey. I ask for health that I might do greater things. I was given infirmity that I might do better things. I ask for riches that I might be happy. I was given poverty that I might be wise. I ask for power that I might have the praise of men. I was given weakness that I might feel the need of God. I ask for all things that I might enjoy life. I was given life that I might enjoy all things. I got nothing that I asked for, but everything I had hoped for. Almost despite myself, my unspoken prayers were answered. I am among all men most richly blessed. That's dedicated to you, Mr. Arnie.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you, man. That's beautiful. That's wonderful.
It's been around a long time. It seems as though when you talk about your parents, they understood life. They understood life that you get by giving. That you get up, then and it's just an human obligation to help somebody else. Maybe that's why you found yourself in Sierra Leone and Liberia and did you say Guinea-Bissau?
Yeah, could have been. But I was richly blessed.
You say you're from New York City. You from the city itself?
Yeah. Originally, that's right from the Lower East Side of Manhattan.
Wow. How was that? How was growing up in New York City?
Well, we moved when I was 6. My parents kept working to try to get us into a better circumstance. And we moved to Queens, New York. And I had never seen so many trees. I thought, it was Queens? It's just trees along the sidewalk. But So, oh my God. It's not a park. Parents would sometimes take me to a park, and then eventually, when I was 11, we moved. My parents did well enough. We bought a home, and we moved to Long Island, which was a suburb of the city.
Strong Island.
Yep, you got it. And that was just very different. It was, Long Island hadn't been built up yet, and so it was just a lot of, I don't know what. I keep saying trees because I didn't see a lot of trees when I was growing up. But there was space, and you could breathe, and but I'll tell you the truth, and it was wonderful. I had a wonderful childhood, but I missed the city because I could go outside as a kid, and there'd be 15 kids out there. We'd do whatever, not to get into real trouble, but to mess around and play stickball and I don't know, chase each other and fight and whatever. And when we went out to Long Island, man, I couldn't scrape up 3 kids. I should tell my father, Dad, I don't know about this place. Where is everybody? But it was very pleasant living because it hadn't been built up yet, and so it was a different way. And when I graduated, I went to University of Buffalo, so I was back in the city. So I felt kind of a little bit more at home.
So tell me about Barack Obama sitting in your class and you teaching him.
Oh, well, he had been a community organizer, as I'm sure you know, and not with us, but doing it with some other people in Chicago. And he did it for 2 years, and then he decided that he wanted to go on to graduate school and try to do something different. Maybe he could create change by getting into a position of change. And so I didn't know him then, but he then applied for law school. And our organization, the Industrial Areas Foundation, at that time, 3 times a year did 10 days of training for community organizers. And somehow or other, I guess Chicago, being in Chicago, he heard of our training. And people that he knew said it was, the best training you could get as a community organizer. That's the one you would go to. But he was already leaving community organizing. This was in the summer before he went on to graduate school. But he applied anyway to get, to go there. And the director at the time, a man named Ed Chambers, who has since passed, said, okay, you can come. He was impressed with him and thought, well, maybe he could talk him out of going to graduate school or something like that. And so he was there, and I was on the national staff. And there were a lot of people. There's about 120 people there. So you're broken down into like 7 different groupings. So you can have seminars. And it was like the 3rd day, and I hadn't gotten to his group yet. We kept rotating as the trainers. And at night we'd have like a repast for people, a repast, like a little gathering. And but I didn't notice him. There were 120 people, and I hadn't been in his class, so I didn't know who he was. But Chambers came up to me and said, "I'd like you to meet this fellow Barack Obama. He's one of the trainees. Have you been in his class yet?" And I said, "No, I haven't seen him. I don't know who he is." And he said, "Well, I'd like you to meet him because he's going to go on to law school, but maybe we can get a shot at him. I think he's a really bright guy." And I told him a little about you, and he'd like to meet you. At the time, Barack Obama was in an interracial relationship and my wife is African American. And so he thought maybe, well, and obviously my children are interracial, and so, well, maybe, you could talk with him, and he had told me about his background, that he was interracial, and he never got to meet many people who were interracial that were in this work, and so I told him about you, and he'd like to meet with you. So I said, sure, I'll talk to him, and he pointed him out to me, and I went over to him, introduced myself, and then we wound up in about a 2-hour conversation. He was both very curious about the movement. I wasn't any kind of leader. I was just a follower. I was just like, part of the group that went to jail and part of the group that was in the demonstrations and stuff like that. I wasn't no leader, but I told him what I knew about it, and then he wanted to know about my wife and the children. We have 4 children, and what it was like raising interracial children, and how did we do it? And when we got married, it was still illegal in 12 states for us to get married. So he wanted to know about all that. And we just wound up in a very long conversation about life, race, raising children. As a white person, raised black children. And that's when I realized that, he told me that he had been raised mostly by his grandparents. I think in Nebraska or Kansas, I can't remember, but he was the only person of color, around. And then we talked a lot about organizing and all. And it was clear to me that he wasn't going to not go to law school, but I just found him fascinating. And he asked me if in a couple of days, if we could meet and talk again. And by then I had been in his group, and you could just see how bright he was, and smart. And he had a quiet kind of charisma about him. So you could tell the people in his group kind of, when he spoke, everybody was quiet. It was, he was, I would say he was mature beyond his age. At that time, he was in his mid-20s or something like that. So we met again, and we had another very long conversation about life and being a lawyer. And not that I knew much about being a lawyer, but he wanted to be, I asked him what his ambition was. And he said he either wanted to be a leader of a major civil rights organization or a judge, a federal court judge. And that's why he was going to law school. So that if he wanted to be a judge, obviously you would have to have been, go through law school and all. And we had a long conversation about that, and some personal things that he, raised up and all, and we talked about, and then it was over. It's 10 days. We had a little get together to say goodbye. I've never seen him since, but he's kindly at different times, I guess, mentioned me. So I wound up in the books, autobiographies about him, or biographies, I should say, not autobiographies, biographies. But I've never seen him. But when I was organizing in Washington, in D.C., I was organizing a bill type organization in the district. Every once in a while, I'd come across somebody who would say, "Oh, I saw President Obama." And I said, "I knew you," and he said, "Oh, well, give him my regards." So I didn't have much to do with how he wound up. But,
sure you did. So tell me about Reverend Vernon Dobson, Union Baptist Church. How did you first meet him?
Well, first, let me say he's one of the most special people I've ever met. He had I would say there are, outside of my parents, my wife, there are 4 or 5 people that have had a huge impact on me, and Reverend Dobson is one of those. I met him because he and a couple of other clergy. I don't know if you recall Reverend Wendell Phillips.
Yes, sir. He had the
and
long beard. I think he
sure
rode a
did.
motorcycle too, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And we all called
Liberty
him.
Heights in Dukeland, Heritage Baptist.
Oh, God bless you. Yeah, Heritage United Church of Christ. And he and Wendell and a couple of a Catholic priest who's since passed, Monsignor O'Dwyer, had come together and tried to and asked the Industrial Areas Foundation to come into Baltimore and build an organization there. And so it got started. I didn't start it. It got started in '77, and it was really a failure. It kept and the Industrial Areas Foundation had suggested 3 different organizers, and they all apparently didn't do well. And so it was kind of on its last leg, I guess. And I had left the Industrial Areas Foundation to teach at the graduate school at San Jose State. My wife and I were teaching there. I thought I wanted to take a break. The organizing was, I get so into it. It was taking up, 12 and 13 or 14 hours of my life. And by then we had started a family, and my work schedule was out of control. And my wife reminded me very well, carefully, we wanted a child and you're not around. So, and so it was, organizing for me has been something that's been, a blessing that I'll put 12, 14 hours a day into it. At any rate, I left. I decided that I just had to go cold turkey, and I went to San Jose State. But I enjoyed teaching at the university, but it wasn't like doing it. And I eventually wound up wandering off into the barrios of San Jose. And at which point my wife said, well, you might as well get paid for it. Now you're not even getting paid for it. So the director, this fellow Ed Chambers, asked me to come to Baltimore. He told me it's the first predominantly Black organization that we had been in since the Black Power movement. We had been in Black communities, and the Black Power movement came, we moved out and understood, that we needed to move out because we were Black and white and Mexican American. And we were, at any rate, so he said it's on its last leg. And, we've raised money to come into Brooklyn to build an organization. It's predominantly Black. But they've become skeptical because we have no other Black organizations. They're all Latino. And so there's this one guy, though, that's worth us trying to stay there. I said, why don't we just leave? 3 years we failed. I mean, let's admit your failure and move on. And he said, well, there's this guy, Reverend Dobson, Vernon Dobson. He said, I never met anybody like him. I've been organizing all my life, but I don't want to give up because of him. I said, because of one man? I mean, you failed for 3 years. He said, no, we got to try. He may have given up. I said, why hadn't he given up? He said, well, he may have. And he said he's just tired of us. Maybe, we've sent 3 organizers in there, IAF has, and they've all been white, and they've all failed, and he's just about done with it. So, but I'm telling you, Arnie, you're going to meet him. You're going to meet the most unique person you've met. And I said, well, okay, well, I'll go interview. But, I can't imagine what this interview is going to be like. I'm the 4th white person you're sending in, Well, he said, well, tell him about, your experience in civil rights movement. I said, well, that's not going to matter. I mean, what does that? But please do it. If it doesn't work out, well, you'll go somewhere else and, get back into organizing. I'm asking you as a favor. I said, okay. I don't think it's going to work, but okay. So I went into Baltimore and I interviewed with some of the leaders that were left in Bill. And then it came time to be interviewed by Reverend Dobson, and I went to Union Baptist.
So
he was angry at the IAF, 3 white organizers. They failed. He'd put a lot of time into it. Ed Chambers had promised him a black organizer. He looked at me and said, "You don't look black to me." I said, "No, no, Pastor, I'm not black." And but the thing that the one thing that he caught on about me was that I had been involved in the civil rights movement, and that meant a lot to him. So eventually, I was hired. I don't think I had much choice. I didn't have any money. And I raised some money from foundations I had known from before to keep going. And we started off with he wasn't happy with me. He didn't want to meet and all that. And what turned it around began to turn it around, I should say, is I knew from past experience that the community had been redlined, even though I'd never been there. I knew black communities were redlined.
it started here. It started here back in around 1910.
Yeah, well, I didn't know where it started, but I knew where it was everywhere. And I had fought it in Milwaukee years before. And so the organization was just about done. I mean, it had no money. It had a couple $1,000s that I had raised, but it was on sort of its last leg. And so but there were a couple of people, that still had heart. And I told them we knew the community was redlined, and they affirmed it, obviously, for me. And I said, well, let's do this. Let's I've done this before. There's something called the Community Reinvestment Act, which means that we can get all of the information from every bank of where their loans went and how much they were. And so if the 5 or 6 of you will just, study it with me, we got to go through all of the loans with these, Maryland National at the time, Provident at the time. We can prove it, Well, we all know it. I said, yeah, but we got to be able to prove it. I'm sure, everybody knows what. So we did, and we found out, this was 1980, the year before, where they had the records of the $426 million that had been loaned out into the predominantly black community in the east and west, southwest, side, northeast. And 60% of the city, 1.4% of the loans had gone there. So, it's one thing to know, it's another thing to see it. We drew a map, or had a map of Baltimore, and 98%, just about, of all the loans went into the minority population, the white population of the city. And so, what were we going to do about it? Well, make a long story short, we did a survey of the churches. There weren't very many involved at the time in Bill, but at any rate, of the churches, there were a couple of black Catholic parishes in the organization. They had schools. Reverend Dobson had his, daycare center, and we did a blind survey on one Sunday, where people wrote down where they banked, how much they had in the bank, without their names, obviously, where they did their insurance, because it's the same situation with auto insurance and house insurance, and so we did that, and it was like a collection, that people wrote it out, and in just the 15 congregations that were involved, we had $15 million in the bank. And we knew which banks because people wrote them. So, make a long story short, we went to Provident because they still had some branches in the black community at the time, and tried to get a meeting with the president to talk about this. We had something like, I don't remember now, $4 million in the bank, and we were getting nothing back in loans. And I kept saying to people, why would we do business with people who don't want to do business with us? The heck with them. Someone's going to want this money. And I met with, do you remember Ideal?
Ideal Savings and Loan on Druid Hill Avenue by the YMCA.
Yep. So I met with Mr. Lansley, and we talked about it and strategized, and he was quite a character. We used to have lunch together a lot. At any rate, the guy would meet with us. So I said, well, let's on a Friday at 11:30 at their downtown bank. Banking was different then, right? You get your check, and you had an hour to go cash it for the week, and then get back to work. So it was all very different then. And so we lined up about 100 people. I could just sort of gather, scrape, because the organization was kind of weak. Anyway, we scraped about 100 people, and at 11:30 we lined up, and we were going to take dollars and change them for 100 pennies, and then count out the pennies. And when we got to 98, we would, quote, accidentally drop the pennies on the floor. And so the actual customers who came at 12 o'clock had to get behind the line of 100 people. And they were never going to get into the bank to cash their paycheck because we were there, counting out pennies and dropping them on the floor and all of that. And I told Reverend Dobson we were going to do this. And would he come? And he said, oh, you think you're going to have 100 people there? I said, well, people made commitments to how many people are going to bring. We've been training. I believe the people that were there. He said, well, now that I got to see. I want to see that. You're going to do that? I said, well, we're going to try. We're going to do it. I don't know what's going to happen. He said, well, do you know? You don't know the city. This is the South. You're going to get met with, I don't know what you did in Milwaukee, but you're going to have so many police dogs and police cars and paddy wagons, and they're going to haul your butt into jail, you and everybody else. I said, but they might, but there's nothing illegal about being in the bank and asking for change. What would be the charge? Making change? What kind of charge? He said, well, I don't know, but this I got to see. So he came, and I said, would you bring a couple of people with you? He said, yeah, I'll bring a couple of people with me. And that's actually how I got Reverend Miles to come. He was very skeptical.
Bishop Doug Miles.
Yes. And he wouldn't, he had a little church on the west side, small church. I'm going to forget the name of it, but he told me the original name of it was Watch Your Step Baptist Church. And, it was on Walnut. I forget where now. Walnut and I can't remember. But at any rate, and he didn't want to deal with white people and all of this. I told him what we were going to do, and he said, well, I may come just to take a peek. I said, oh, well, okay, whatever you want to do. So we did it, and we tied up the bank, and it was a mess. The whole thing was a mess. And the people behind us, who were predominantly white, trying to cash their paycheck, because that time you had very few people, even in the secretaries, that were people of color working downtown, way back, I'm talking 1980, And they couldn't understand what was going on. There was all these black people in line, but we were trained. We were disciplined. We stayed in line. We didn't but we would just drop the pennies on the floor, so they could never get in to the bank. And they called the police. They had Reverend Dobbs is right. I'd been in the civil rights days. I had been in some demonstrations, but I never saw so many police and dogs. And I thought, what kind of city? What is this place? I thought of it as the North. I thought Reverend Dobbs was just telling me you don't understand where you are. It's Baltimore. I thought I didn't know it. I thought it's the North. Well, he sure was right. And then all these dogs snarling at people, and finally, what happened was the security guard at the bank got so frustrated at the press that were trying to get in to see what was going on that he pushed a cameraman. I don't know if it was Channel 11 or I can't remember which one. And a guy went in against the plate glass window, and that guy got angry as could be. So all the press came in and were filming this. And finally, the bank president, who would meet with us, called down from upstairs. He had his office upstairs. And we went up, and he was angry as he could be. And he said, "When does this end?" Yelling at us. And I said, "First, leaders, trained, said, first, act respectfully. Stop yelling. We're all adults in this room. We're not yelling at you. Stop yelling at us. We're not going to talk. We're leaving if you're going to be disrespectful this way." Well, how's this going to go on? The leader said, "Well, until you start making loans. We want loan back to us the amount of money we have in your bank, because this is foolish for us to put our money in a bank, and you won't serve us. You won't give us it. You won't give us loans. We're going to take our money out of your bank, and we're going to do it in a way that's very public, just like what's going on downstairs." So he said, okay, let's meet. And we set up a meeting in 2 weeks, and we negotiated, and he agreed. And we said, now we have to check every quarter. You have to show us where you're giving the loans, because you could say anything to us to get us out of here, and we don't know what you're doing. So when we won that, I think it kind of
sent shockwaves across the city, the banking industry, and not just in Baltimore, but across the nation.
Well, it got Reverend Dobson and Reverend Miles interested in what we were trying to do. So
you made believers of them.
Well, that started a relationship with Reverend Dobson, and that went on. That relationship lasted till he died. I was in his home when he was very sick, in his bed upstairs, and I would say outside of my parents, Reverend Dobson's had the most influence on my life of anyone. We got very, very close. I miss him terribly today. On Fridays, he had an office upstairs. He had an office downstairs that was right on the sidewalk, level. And he'd keep his window open, and every person, not every person, but people of all different walks of life would come by that window. It was like a bank window, and they would pour out their heart to him, and then they'd come inside, and he'd either give them money or solace or prayer or whatever, he's just a remarkable person. One of those people that are totally irreplaceable. I could spend a day with him where we would be in public housing projects, and he knew people. People would yell out, "Reverend Dobson, Reverend," and then we could go downtown for a meeting with a CEO where we were challenging him on something, and he knew that person. And then he had his own TV show. I don't know if you remember, with Homer Favor. And,
I don't remember that.
Oh yeah, Channel 11. Yeah, every week. people used to call him Father. That was his nickname, Father, because he did so much for everybody. And he's just a remarkable man. He has a beautiful family, and I just love the man.
Let me ask you this: do you remember the basketball court in the church?
Sure.
What was that about?
Well, that was about, at first people weren't too happy with that because, Union Baptist is a wonderful church. It was the second oldest Black Baptist church in the city. And it has a wonderful congregation. The congregation was predominantly, middle class. And so some of the things that Reverend Dobson did weren't, things that people would necessarily appreciate or approve of. Many did, but many didn't. Well, he decided to put the basketball court up that wasn't a basketball court. That was a meeting room for like when you have dinners or, things like that. And he was trying to get the kids on the street off the street. And so he put baskets up in this meeting room. And there were a lot of people, in the church that were very upset him. You can't, what are you doing? But he said, I'm ministering I'm pastoring to people. And he had all these kids that would come in, and then he had leagues there, and he ran, there were tons of kids. And it was Reverend Dobson. It was beautiful. It was like the daycare center. It was like all the houses on the street where Union Baptist is, on the second floor. All those places where he rehabbed, where homeless people could stay. He bought houses across the street from the church that were like halfway houses for people when they were trying to get straight off of drugs. He was besides a great preacher. He was really, really smart. I don't think maybe people do, but I don't know that people realize just how what a fantastic mind he had. And he had that, you may remember, Donnie, he had that big booming voice. And on Friday, he had his office upstairs, and at the end of the day at 5:00, I knew he would be up there, because if he was downstairs, people would be at that window. He'd never be able to write his sermon. He had this office upstairs where he'd go up to sneak up there. And I knew where he was. So at least 2-3 Fridays a month, if I was in town, I would go up there and he would talk his sermon to me. And then we'd get into conversations and what we were going to do, and in Baltimore. And I miss him.
Tell me about one of you. I'm sure you broke bread. You ate food somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about a dining experience with Reverend Dobson.
Interesting thing about it is we did, but mostly we brought food in. He didn't like going to restaurants. He wasn't, I don't know, that wasn't going out to eat or something. Wasn't a thing for him. He didn't particularly enjoy it. But there was a restaurant when we did go. I can't remember. It was a place that he and you remember Reverend Bascom?
Marion C. Bascom.
There you go. Well, where he and Marion used to go. And I can't remember the name of it now.
With the Sissons? You ever heard of Sissons?
No, I hadn't heard of that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I
So what did they serve? What'd you get?
fish, fried fish fry. Reverend Dobson liked fish, but we mostly brought food in. I don't know. He didn't like to go out much. I mean, to eat. He went out all. He was out in the community all the time. But he wasn't much for going out to well, once or twice we went down to Little Italy. But yeah, he knew Peter Angelos. He knew, I don't know how he got to know these people. And so I think that one time we went down and some restaurant that he liked. He knew Jim Rouse very well. And he knew Matt DeVito, who then took over from Jim Rouse. He had relationships with people that you wonder how he got them, and you wouldn't think that they would, because that they would be connected in some kind of way, but it was always around what was going to help the community. And he would get money, from Jim Rouse or Matt DeVito or Peter Angelos. We got Peter Angelos to, put up the first $500,000 for something that we were doing. And you wouldn't put the two guys together, but Peter Angelos really liked Reverend Dobson, and vice versa.
So where's your book, Arnie?
My book? Oh, well, thank you for mentioning it. Yeah, I wrote that during the pandemic, and I was going through a different cancer problem, and I got out of the hospital, and I couldn't be around people. I was
You were forced to be with yourself, huh?
I was. That's a great way of putting it, Donnie. That you got it. I was. It was just my wife and I, and I had come out of the hospital with a PICC line that my wife had to learn to inject the medication into me and all of that, and that was going to go for 9 weeks, and I thought, well, what am I going to do here? I'm not used to sitting around feeling sorry for myself. That doesn't make any sense. And so I said, well, Reverend Dobson had always told me, why don't you write a book? He had passed by them. Why don't you write a book? Why aren't you writing a book about all your experiences? Oh, Reverend, I don't, Pastor, I don't. You need to write a book, So it was in my head, because when he told me to do things, even if I didn't do them, they stayed in my head. And so I thought about it and wrote a book. Yeah, Lessons Learned, I called it.
Is it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble?
Yeah, both. You can get it anywhere. Yeah.
So are we going to see you on October 29th at Union Baptist Church, 3 p.m. for this 100th birthday party posthumously for Reverend Dobson?
Absolutely. Sandra called me and told me about it, and I said, I wouldn't miss it.
Well, let me tell you, she thinks the world of you.
Well, vice versa. Reverend Dobson has a beautiful family. They're terrific. Kim Dobson is really a major person at Morgan. Michael was a delegate. Unfortunately, he passed too soon. But all of the Dobson family, children, were wonderful. And Miss Napoleon, his wife, always welcomed me in the home, and I always felt welcome there, and had some good lunches and in the kitchen with them. And I don't know, it was just they blessed me. The whole family has blessed me.
Well, you've blessed a lot of people, it sounds like, Mr. Arnie.
Oh, well, thank you. I've been blessed.
How many grandkids you got?
6. Yep.
What's a lesson you could teach us new grandparents? I'm a newbie.
Oh, just love them up. That's all. Love them up. Enjoy them. Play with them. It makes you feel like a child. You know, you got to get back down on the floor and roll around with them and play with them. And as they get older, you know, try to be at the things that are important to them. You know, their basketball games or their. Our 2 daughters are in the arts, and so be it our oldest daughter is the youngest and first person of color to be the dean and director of the Juilliard School of Dance. She was a Alvin Ailey, and so be it their stuff. Our younger daughter is an actor trying to make it in Los Angeles. So, and she just wrote and produced a short that's gotten into a number of film festivals. So, you know, be it the debut, that, and so, you know, they bring you great joy. They're going to bring you great joy, Donnie.
So you got 4 daughters?
2 sons and 2 daughters.
2 sons and 2 daughters. Okay.
Right. Our 2 sons are in the world of, well, one's in the world of business. One's started a realty firm and is the director of our old, when I'm in the IAF, director of our nonprofit development corporation that has built 6,500 homes in East New York, Brooklyn. Kind of changed that area around. So a little bit in the
do you do any more organizing?
No, man, I'm 80. I stopped a while ago. I do a little coaching.
We may have to take you up on that here in Sandtown. I might need to bring some of these newbies and sit at your feet and learn something from you.
Well, I'd be happy to talk to anybody. Sandtown, I'm so glad you live in there. Sandtown broke my heart. I tell you, I wanted to keep building. I knew, you know, those homes that we built 30 years ago now. I drive through there once just to, I don't know, just to reminisce, but I don't know any people, I'm sure, that live there anymore.
I call those Nehemiah houses the county.
A cop told me one time back when he said, I call it the Nehemiah Oasis. Well, you know,
it shows what happens when you invest in a neighborhood. You don't have to go 30 miles or 8 miles.
That's
you
right.
You can build it right here.
Should and build. We started doing that, continuing that work on the east side of the city. And we've now rehabbed, I don't know, a couple of hundred homes. And we build is not challenging the city to come up and the state with $2.5 billion we have 18,000 vacant houses in the city. We're never going to get there unless we attack it as the major problem it is. You can't do 10. It's lovely, and think that it's going to change.
Make an impact. Nehemiah goes from Sandtown all the way up to Penn North, Woodbrook Avenue, and a couple of streets over, or at least one street over.
Oh, God bless you, man. You know it. God bless you.
It's obvious. It's like a clean glass next to a dirty glass. It's obvious. It sticks out, you know. So thank you for that commitment to this city.
But you know, now I'm talking 15 years ago, so I haven't kept up with it. But there are over 600 homes, and in that whole time, at that point, now I don't know where it's at now, there had only been 2 foreclosures, and the fight, was that, people aren't going to keep it up. They're going to, blah, all that nonsense about working people, lower income,
Just
all of
like
that.
the food markets, Mr. Arnie, they say they won't put food markets because the people won't support it. That's hogwash.
Exactly.
There's a food desert from Lexington Market all the way to Mondawmin Mall. And to me, it's still a food desert because what food there is not always the best quality food.
No, amen to that. And so, and I was just saying to people, city people, we were trying to get we got a hold of one of the streets in Santana. I'm going to forget the name of the street where we could get the whole street. It was, we rehabbed both sides of the street. Now I'm trying to remember.
Calhoun, Cary, Stricker.
Yeah, Calhoun Street. Thank you. And we wanted to keep going. It was expensive to rehab, more expensive than getting on the ground and building from, the ground up. And we had raised $2.5 million from the churches and the diocese. And we had gotten, Jim Rouse had put together something called Enterprise at that point.
Enterprise Foundation, yeah.
Yeah. He got involved in it, and Kurt Schmoke was the mayor then, and put money in, and we even got he had been our arch enemy, but as governor we got Schaefer to put $12.5 million into it as governor, and
so big ups to Kurt Schmoke and to the late Don Schaefer.
Yes, that's right, and but we wanted to keep going because I knew if we stopped, nothing, there'd still be all that area that's vacant, and we're going to get more vacant. I mean, you could just, predict it.
I wish we had leaders like Schmoke, like Schaefer, who understood you have to invest in the community. Look at the harbor. David Bramwell's about to knock it all down and start over. But I remember for decades, this city invested in the harbor, but would not invest in Uptown. Lillian Jones Recreation Center, we need a new one. Greenmount Rec, we need a new one. I mean, this city refuses to invest where they need to invest. These are people, they live here.
Absolutely, and they're good people. And we could point to places like the homes in Santana and say, look, if you do something decent, people.
And there's no crime around Nehemiah. I gotta tell you, say what they want. It's an oasis. It's a mindset. People don't bring foolishness through there.
Is that true now? Still,
they're not having that foolishness.
Yeah. I drive through there just because I reminisce, whatever. I don't know anybody anymore there, but I used to be able to stop off and say hi, or come in and have a cup of coffee.
And it looks pretty. It's pretty trees.
The trees have grown, and it looks great, and you don't see trash.
No.
You don't see trash on the ground and, all over the place. So
that's what ownership does. It's mine. I'm going to take care of it.
Exactly. So what gets me still so angry and get my blood boiling is there are examples. You see what can work. Why wouldn't you continue to do it? Instead of sitting around and complaining about everything, there are solutions.
I wish you could give me a solution for these doggone bike lanes that make traffic so narrow. I can't turn. The fire truck can't get. But Mr. Arnie, I'd be talking with you forever. Let me just give you your final say.
Okay. Well, Sandra had called me, so my final say is God bless the Dobson family. They are most beautiful people, and I hope nothing but good things for them. And God bless them.
We wish the best for you. What's your wife's name?
Lucille.
Well, we want to send our appreciation to Miss Lucille for sharing you.
Oh, well, thank you.
With us and to your children, because I know organizing long hours.
Right.
But we thank her for sharing you.
Well, thank you. we've been married 50 years in December, so November. So we've been fortunate. I have a wonderful wife.
Good deal. Mr. Arnie Graf, a legend extraordinaire. It is
Oh,
truly a pleasure, sir.
Great meeting you. Thank you, Donnie.
Yes, sir.
Great.
See you soon. Good morning, world.
Bye-bye.